Hello my friends, welcome back to the channel. I hope you don't mind that we are changing a little bit of the interior. Today we are recording the video from my bedroom. And today we're gonna discuss another true crime case from Norway. A girl died and might be there's a possibility that even another girl had died from one of the suspects. So it's quite chilling, it's quite gruesome, and it's really interesting, and we cannot still understand some of the things that happened out there. So I hope you will stick with me until the end, and that being said, let's just start. This will be an unfortunate story of a young girl named Brigitte Tengs. She was only 17 in 1995, and according to friends and family, a very nice and outgoing girl. And so, May 6, 1995, Brigitte Tengs was found sexually assaulted and murdered. She was last seen at around 8 minutes past midnight talking to some unknown person in a car. This will be the beginning of the most mind-blowing and complicated cases of Norway. Before all of this happened, Brigitte was living her life to the fullest happily in the Karmøy. Karmøy is a municipality in Rogaland County in Norway, and this place is quite famous with beautiful nature and white sand beaches. It was pretty much a safe place to live. And so on the May 6th of 1995, Brigitte was found dead. She was found around 400 meters away from her family home, and she was found by a local farmer who was just walking around looking for his missing sheep. And there she was, lying in the bushes. She was killed. She was also sexually assaulted, and it looked really gruesome. What happened on that night is one of the most horrible cases in Norway. And we can surely say it's a cold case because it hasn't been solved completely up to nowadays. So what really happened on that night? As I said before, she was seen talking to some unrecognized man in a car, and as far as I understand, this man still hasn't been recognized. And some witnesses said that around midnight they noticed the car speeding really fast on the same road where Brigitte was walking on that night. And so allegedly it was believed that girl was walking alone on that road. She was on her way home when somebody attacked her. She was dragged through the woods, along the trees. Most probably she was resisting. All of her dress was ripped off and her underwear was dragged down, and she most probably was fighting, and this is why she had these injuries in her head. And until nowadays the police hasn't found any object that could suit an object that could cause these head injuries. When the police arrived, it was heavily raining, so they were using some plastic to cover from the rain and securing it with the rocks that were around her body. Some believe that a rock could be the object that caused the injuries, but later on it was discarded. And there on this crime scene they found, I think, the most important, as they believed, evidence of the case. They found some hair, and it was a long blonde hair, and they sent it for a DNA test, and it appeared that these hair didn't belong to Brigitte, and this is why the police concluded that these hair actually belonged to the murderer. And this is why they were searching now for a blonde, most probably male, because only a male could do something like this. These hair actually served as like the basis for further search of a blonde male who could have done this. On December 1995, around 1,500 people were questioned. 1,030 tips were registered in the police's extensive briefcases, and 325 blood samples were taken. But fast forward in 1996, new analysis showed that these hair could actually come from the victim. As it appears, this evidence was quite contaminated, so therefore they couldn't say like 100% that it belongs or doesn't belong to the victim. So it was quite controversial. And so investigation started, and in 1997 police started to get quite suspicious about one of Brigitte's family's members. they assumed that it could be her cousin who did this, that he was waiting there on the road, that he attacked and did all of these gross things to her. And so back in 1995, when this murder took place, the cousin was only 19 years old, and police decided just to take him in for interrogation. And from what I've read, I'm just like saying now what I felt like. From what I read, the police had already quite decided that the cousin is the guilty one, but I'm just like saying what I felt like, and you will see what happens afterwards, just bear with me. You might be asking what made police think and be so quite sure about the cousin, that he might be guilty. Well, first of all, he lived quite close to Brigitte's house, and he was cousin, so obviously he knew her, and he had some kind of, let's say, adventures in the past, like he was going naked in the public gym at the school and teachers were complaining about him. So he had some, I think, psychological tendencies that kind of could signify that he might be this person who did this. And so the cousin was brought in for interrogation, and this interrogation, I must say, my friends, was quite weird. So in the time span of around 5 weeks, he was interrogated for 180 hours, and from all of these interrogations, only 2 were logged. So let's say they were only 2 of them were like officially documented. Why didn't they log or record all of them? I think usually police does that. And the result of this interrogation is like this. In 1997, February 24th, he gives 2 notes to his lawyer. One of the notes is like intended for the lawyer, the second one for the police. And this note includes his confession. And the note said, "I acknowledge having caused Brigitte Tengs' death." So this means the next day the police receives the confession, and I think the case might be solved, right? But you know my channel, you know me, so this wasn't it. Allegedly, in those interrogations, the cousin had been encouraged to construct events and write fictional stories about what might have happened to his cousin. And this was like a screenplay about the killing of Brigitte. And in my opinion, this interrogation methods they were using broke the boy. You know, like he already had like psychological problems maybe, and he was easily influenced, and maybe this resulted in him confessing. He might get so confused in his mind that he just, at the end, thought that he actually did it. And now the real fun starts. And I'm being ironic here. After 4 months after he made his confession, he took back his confession. This caused like quite a lot of problems, because the police, if we look into it like more deeply, didn't have any actual evidence against cousin except for this confession and their assumptions that he might be the killer. And I think the police got themselves into trouble with not logging all of the interrogations, because that made all of this process of making him guilty more suspicious, and they didn't have, as I said, like strong evidence against him. I think the public opinion was now that he was like framed, but I'm just saying that's how I feel. But still, like on the same year, he was convicted as guilty, and he was charged with 14 years of prison. The only difference is that although he at the beginning he said that I am guilty, now that he's now sentenced to 14 years, he's saying that he's not guilty. And of course, the cousin now wanted to appeal and get out of the prison. In 1998, he is acquitted of the murder after appealing the case to the Court of Appeal. At the same time, he is sentenced to pay 100,000 kroner in compensation to Tengs' parents in a civil case. So he was acquitted, but still he had to pay the compensation to Brigitte's family, which is quite a weird combination, but in Norway, according to the law, it is possible. I will try and explain. So, criminal case in Norway requires proof beyond reasonable doubt, while in a civil action for damages is required only a reasonable doubt. And this is why both of these things can actually happen together. The cousin files a lawsuit for illegal criminal prosecution, and in 2001 he receives a compensation which was 475,000 Norwegian kroner. At the same time, he also requests for the case to be reopened and looked into again. The police chief rejects the reopening of the case, but he suggests that it's quite relevant to do again a proper DNA test with the hair that they collected from the murder place. And so these hair samples are sent to experts in Austria and are compared to around 40 other hair materials they have collected from the suspects to understand if some of them might be from the guilty one. And in those 40 samples, there was also a sample from the cousin. But the hair was not identified. So after doing all of these tests, they couldn't find the match, which actually indicates that that wasn't the cousin's hair. He wasn't there. But as I mentioned before, even though they did all of this test, the hair material wasn't really sufficient because it was a little bit contaminated, so we cannot actually be even sure about that. In 2003, the European Court of Human Rights in Strasbourg condemns the Norwegian state to pay compensation to the cousin. The court rules that the judgment for damages goes too far by assuming that he is guilty. Later, the cousin and his father filed a lawsuit against the state, saying that they are real victims of the system and they were asking for millions for a compensation, but they lost this case. Actually, their attempt to get those millions from the state because they're victims of the system draw some attention from media, from people, and now many people knew who this cousin was from this case, because before that they weren't revealing his identity, but now many people knew who he was, and therefore actually cousin lost his job and he was quite a lot of looked down to from different people. So it was also quite a tough time for the cousin, whether he's guilty or not. But the good thing is that the case wasn't stuck with this. In 2016, it was decided to reopen it again. And now we're moving almost to nowadays, the year 2021. There's the case takes a new direction. The police arrests and charges with the murder of Brigitte Tengs, one man in his 50s. And what is more, this man is also suspected of killing another Norwegian girl, and this murder took place in the year 2000 in Stavanger. The girl's name was Tina Jorgersen. Publicly, the police confirms that actually this man had been on their spotlight for a while, also in relation to Brigitte's case, and they also said that he had been even interrogated in relation to both of these cases. So I guess it didn't lead anywhere, or maybe they were so happy that the cousin confessed that they forgot about the existence of him. I don't know what happened there, but the thing is that this man, he didn't confess killing Brigitte, and he was really surprised that they're trying to tie him to this case of other girl whose name was Tina. Who is this man? Well, he is no saint at all. In 1995, the year when Brigitte was killed, he was convicted of doing some weird stuff, like calling women and moaning and whining. The verdict states that the accused has problems with sexuality, which necessitates a treatment. And that is not all. He was accused of stealing stuff, like for example in 2001, in 2003 and 2004, he was actually robbing some women and stealing their clothes and shoes. So he had some psychological and sexually related problems, maybe some mental illnesses happening in his head. And you might be asking, why now? Why they are paying attention to this 50-year-old man only now? That was a question that was also raised in a book that was written by an author. His name was Bjorn Olav Jahr, and he published this book that was called What Happened to Brigitte. And he was actually in some chapters looking into some kind of man in his 50s that was on the spotlight of the police, that was interrogated. And allegedly, according to his book, this man was spotted a lot riding a car with young girls. And so this kind of also could relate to this man in the car that was seen together with Brigitte before she was killed. And again, if this is true, I'm again raising the question why the police was talking to him, looking at him as a suspect, even like considering all of his past with the things that he was stealing and riding with young girls, like why did they discard him? Were they really so much blinded by the confession of the cousin that they actually discarded the real killer? Not saying that he is, because he didn't confess, but I'm just like saying out loud what I'm thinking and how it looks. Actually, I found an article saying that in 2015 the police attorney of respective police district was interviewed about this man in the wake of Jahr's book. He then said that the man had been under investigation, but all the blood tests and other samples did not match with anything in the crime scene, so he was discarded. But yeah, remember I told you that this man in 50s was also tied to this other case that took place in the year 2000 with the killing of this girl named Tina in Stavanger? Well, there was another author who wrote a book about this case, about this girl Tina, and he actually contacted this man in the 50s, we do not know his identity, and he gave a comment. I have nothing to do with the murder of Tina or Brigitte. It is my past that causes me to be drawn into these matters. I know a lot of people talk shit about me, but I tried to rise above it. And also the thing is that this man agreed even to give his own DNA for the tests. So he was kind of cooperating, so maybe he just wanted to show himself in the good light, and maybe because he knew, or his lawyers told him that the DNA cannot be actually compared because the hair they found on the crime scene of Brigitte was contaminated and wasn't enough for creating a real profile that could be compared to other profiles. And by the way, with this new character coming on the stage as a possible murderer, the cousin was checked out of this case in the year 2021, so he was kind of not even considered guilty anymore. The thing that bothers me throughout all of this case while collecting the materials was how devastating this might be to Brigitte's family, learning that the cousin is or supposed to be guilty of killing her daughter. As I said before, they were living quite close to each other, so I guess they were family who liked to live around, be close to each other, meet each other, and then they learned this. It must be devastating. Father of the cousin, his name is Jakob, in an interview said, I have no problem understanding that Catherine and Torger, the parents of Brigitte, have gone with the opinion that they thought it was our son who had committed this murder. There have been a handful of sheriff's officers who have been out there and brainwashed them to maintain this perception. And also noticed that the difference between Brigitte's parents and the father of the cousin who was accused is quite huge. The father was quite vocal. He even talked to media, and he also accused Brigitte Tengs' parents' assistant lawyers of kind of misinforming the parents so that they feel like the cousin is guilty. I don't know, that was what he said on his interviews, but the assistant lawyers actually came out and replied to this accusation. The assistant lawyers of Teng's family responded to accusations with the following. It is not the lawyer's task to shape the client's opinion. They have been very clear on their opinion in this matter. But now, more triggering thing is that it's year 2021, and this man in his 50s is now accused of killing their daughter, which means that all of these 25 years when they were carrying this burden and this feeling that the cousin did it, it was just like a waste of time, and this man in the 50s could be the guilty one. So all of this was just like a simple nonsense. And so, where are we now? I read somewhere that the case psychologist who was working with this case during the time when the cousin was accused, he said that this was like one of the toughest cases he had ever witnessed. And I think afterwards I read somewhere in some sources that Norwegian police has now stepped back from this called like FBI interrogation method when they are like hunting the person who they are interrogating, which in my opinion is the right thing to do. I mean, this example served quite well, showing that this doesn't work. But I don't know, I need your opinion about the cousin. Could he be the one? Because I'm like on his side that he's not guilty, but again, there is something about him that makes me feel that he could be still that man. And as if for this moment, so this man in his 50s is charged with the murder of Brigitte Tengs and also of the other girl named Tina. So we don't know, like, this case is unsolved, and I think we just have to keep our hands on the pulse and see where it goes. Will he be like put into jail for these killings, and will they find any like real evidence against him? So I'm confused. To be honest, I'm confused. So let me know what you are thinking about this case. Do you think the cousin was the one, or maybe he was just really like the victim, or do you believe that this man in his 50s could be the guilty one? I would be very happy to know your opinions in the comments. That being said, let's move to the shoutouts. And so the first shoutout, I'm always happy to receive some Scandinavian people reviews about my videos. So the first shout out goes to a person whose nickname is Stale Steel. Thank you for comments. I'm really trying a lot, and I hope you're gonna watch also other videos that I will be posting in the future on my channel. Have a nice day. The second shout out also goes to one of the locals, a person whose nickname is Emil, and thank you for your compliments. It really takes quite a lot of time to make these reviews of Norwegian cases, because I obviously have to go through Norwegian materials, and translating takes a lot of time, but thank you for appreciating my work, and thank you for suggesting that TV program. Maybe I should subscribe to some Norwegian television. Have a nice day, and I hope you will stick around for longer on my channel. And so I'm putting a full stop of my video right now. Stay safe, stay happy, do not take any unnecessary risks, because you never know what's gonna happen in the places that you are not familiar with. So sending you lots of love. See you next time.